I got home that night like I always did, shoes off by the door, keys in the bowl, the scent of baked chicken lingering in the air. The place was spotless, table set for two, candles flickering just enough to feel like she tried. Alara stood by the sink, drying her hands, then turned to greet me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Long day?" she asked. I nodded, setting my bag down, watching her a beat longer than usual. She looked rehearsed, like a host expecting a critic. We sat down to eat. She was unusually quiet. Fork scraped against plate, wine untouched. I made small talk about a colleague's divorce, just something neutral, but she barely responded. Midway through dinner, my phone buzzed, a bank alert. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was just another notification, but her eyes flicked to the screen, quick, sharp, then back to her food. That look, it lodged something in my gut. Later, I was on the couch while she folded laundry in the bedroom. I pulled out my phone, opened the bank app, $5,000, cosmetic surgery clinic, Boulder. My thumb hovered. Scroll, Uber rides, 4 of them, all to and from a place I didn't recognize. My jaw clenched. I didn't say a word. I just stared at that list of transactions like it was a confession written in numbers. Fraud? Maybe. But the pattern, the timing, it felt deliberate. I peeked down the hall. Alara was humming softly, too soft. I leaned back into the cushions and stared at the ceiling. What was she hiding? After a few minutes, I walked into the kitchen, made a show of pouring water. "You hear about that guy in Denver? Got scammed out of 20 grand by his girlfriend," I said casually. Used his card for a boob job, of all things. She didn't even look up, just said, "That's awful," like she was reading a headline. I chuckled. Too light, too forced. If anyone pulled that on me, I'd freeze the card so fast their eyelashes would fall off. That got a reaction. A small, stifled smile. But she still wouldn't meet my eye. Instead, she wiped the counter, then changed the subject to something about the neighbor's dog. I stared at her. Her silence wasn't just avoidance, it was strategic. She wasn't flustered. She was guarding something. Later that evening, I sat in the car inside our garage, engine off, no music, just quiet. I looked around at the space I'd worked so hard to build, a second fridge I saved up for, the shelves I installed myself, all these years, all the bills I paid, the vacations I cut short to cover her dental work, the time I turned down a promotion because she didn't want to move. Was this what I got in return? A mentor once told me, "Marriage is 2 people rowing the same boat, but if you're the only one paddling, you're just dragging dead weight." I used to think that was harsh. Now it sounded like prophecy. That night, I told myself I'd call the card company first thing in the morning, freeze the account, ask questions, find out exactly what she was doing behind my back. But something stopped me. As I lay in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling, pretending to sleep. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message lit up the screen. I turned slowly, peeking through slitted eyes. The text read, "It's done. She's booked for next week." I didn't breathe. Not we, not me. She, someone else. I reached over, careful not to make a sound, and forwarded the message to my email. Then I placed the phone back inch by inch, like handling a grenade. Lying there in the dark, I didn't feel fear. I felt the beginning of something else, something colder. The morning after that message, the air in the house felt different. Alara moved around the kitchen like always. Coffee, toast, her usual morning smoothie, but there was no good morning, no kiss on the cheek, just silence, calculated, heavy silence. She wasn't avoiding me, but she also wasn't looking for me, that kind of quiet. It doesn't happen by accident. I set up my laptop at the kitchen counter and told her I had back-to-back calls. "Might as well work from home today," I said with a shrug. She didn't ask why, just nodded and disappeared into the bedroom. As soon as she closed the door, I opened my email and reread the text I had forwarded from her phone. "It's done. She's booked for next week." My eyes scanned it again and again like I was trying to find something else there, some mistake, some explanation. But the words didn't change. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence wrap around me. My mind raced through the last 6 months. The new clothes. Her sudden interest in working out. The girls' nights that never had photos. The way she locked her phone when she used to leave it face up. Sometimes silence isn't peace, I thought to myself. It's a setup. By 10 a.m., I was on the phone with the credit card company. The fraud department woman was polite, professional, almost too calm for what I was hearing. "No, sir," she said. "None of the charges were reported as fraudulent. In fact, the card was used in person. ID was verified." My throat tightened. "Can you tell me where?" She read off the name of a high-end med spa on the other side of town. "There's also a transaction receipt tied to the appointment." She paused. "There's an address listed for contact. Could you read that for me?" I scribbled it down quickly, trying to keep my hand from shaking. I thanked her and hung up. It was a residential address, not a business, and not ours. I saved the number in my work notes app, just in case she ever looked over my shoulder. Lunch hour came. I told Alara I had a quick client visit. She didn't question it. The drive to the address took 30 minutes. My stomach stayed tight the whole way. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew I needed to see it. The house sat on a quiet street, modest, nothing flashy, but well kept. Blue shutters, wind chimes. A place that looked like it belonged to someone's mother. I parked across the street and stayed in the car just watching. Then a woman walked by with a dog and paused. "You looking for someone, honey?" she asked through the open window. "Sorry," I said quickly. "Just waiting for someone." She tilted her head. "You Ramona's son-in-law?" Ramona. My stomach dropped. That name hadn't been spoken in our house in years. Alara's mother. Estranged, supposedly, a woman she claimed she hadn't seen in forever. I smiled, forced and polite. "No, ma'am. Just a friend of the family." She nodded and walked on. I sat there frozen. That was the address. Alara had been here, the Uber rides, the spa charge. It all made sense now, but not in a way that brought peace. I drove off slowly, my fingers trembling on the wheel. Back home, I waited until she left for a yoga class she never missed. Then I sat down at our shared desktop in the office, something she often forgot to log out of. There it was, an open tab, her email. I clicked. A confirmation from the spa. "Thank you for booking the mother-daughter rejuvenation package. Date, Friday. Deposit, $10,000. I stared at it like it was a punch to the ribs. That money wasn't just about vanity, it was loyalty. To someone she claimed didn't matter. Someone she told me was toxic, out of her life. Now she was spending my savings on a retreat with her. I couldn't speak, couldn't scream. I just sat there, the screen glowing in the dim light, my pulse thudding in my ears. Dinner time came and went. I didn't say a word, just sent a text. Not hungry, going out for a bit. I ended up at a diner off the highway, sat alone in a booth with cracked leather seats, the kind that made you think of simpler times. The waitress poured coffee without asking. I grabbed a napkin and started writing. Every sacrifice. Every night I stayed late to pay for things she wanted. Every time I ignored a feeling in my gut. A list of what I gave up. She walked by again and glanced at the scribbled napkin. "If you're making a list like that," she said without stopping, "he or she's already lost you." I didn't reply. I folded the napkin carefully, slid it into my pocket. That napkin felt like something more than a list. It felt like truth in ink. When I got home, she was already asleep. I went to the closet, opened the small wooden box I hadn't touched in years, the one where I kept letters from my father, old photos, things that still mattered. I slid the napkin inside, closed the lid gently, and I knew then I could never unknow what I'd seen. I woke before dawn. The house was silent. Alara still slept, breathing softly behind closed doors. I sat at the kitchen counter with 2 mugs already brewed, coffee for me, one she never touched. That wooden box. Inside it lay the napkin I'd slipped there the night before. Felt heavier now. It wasn't just paper. It was a marker of everything I'd come to suspect. I flicked on the radio. A song played, the one she loved when we first met. The notes pulled me back 3 years, when everything was simpler. Funny how pain lives inside mundane things. A chord, a scent, a laugh long forgotten. Outside, the world moved on. Inside me, walls were cracking. 3 years earlier, she told me she wanted to start a nonprofit to help single mothers. She had passion in her eyes, and I believed in it. I wrote grant letters. I pushed coworkers to volunteer. We held fundraisers. I hosted dinners. I emailed donors until one day, receipts arrived. The charity had bank statements funneling money toward spa packages, high-end boutiques, frivolous brunches. I confronted her. She cried, said burnout, said she'd make it right. I forgave her. That night I tucked the bills away so she wouldn't lose face. I told myself love meant covering for her, trusting her. Now I see how I covered for her deceit. That betrayal wasn't sudden. It was built over years. I remember the night I almost said it out loud. I can't keep going like this. My brother once warned me, "You're not married, you're managed." I thought he was bitter, but I see now he saw clearer than I did. I froze. I stayed silent. I swallowed the words. I hoped time would heal what I ignored. It never did. I feel shame now, not for wanting to leave, but for letting her hijack my voice so quietly that I barely recognized my own silence. Then my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. It was Camilla, the friend who helped on that charity campaign. She said she spoke with Ramona, Alara's mother, and had heard whispers. Whispers that Alara is planning something big. Whispers that she's been stitching a narrative to turn me into the villain if I speak out first. I thanked her, tried to sound calm. Inside, I was tightening. When someone constructs a story ahead of confrontation, it means they expect a war. And I suddenly understood. This wasn't betrayal by accident, this was orchestration. Back at my desk, I pulled out the napkin again, the list I'd jotted. I reread every line. Sacrifices, doubts, patterns. A new resolve blossomed. I wouldn't beg for forgiveness or comfort. I'd gather truth. I'd build an exit plan. I typed a folder name. Exit plan. Locked it. Hidden it. And felt, perhaps for the first time, the weight of readiness. The air was still, almost too still. I sat on the patio, the sky just beginning to shift toward orange. Alara sat beside me, her wine glass untouched, the liquid catching the light like blood in water. She looked calm, too calm. She started talking about space, about boundaries and entitlements, like she was reading from a script. Her tone wasn't angry, it was polished, like she'd rehearsed this. She used phrases like my truth and emotional clarity. Then came the slip. I spoke to someone about my options, she said, eyes still on the lawn. Options? I asked. She shrugged. It's nothing, just understanding my rights. We sat there for another 2 minutes before I stood up and said I had to prep some work emails. I left her there, glass still full, the kind of silence that lingers after a statement like that. It wasn't empty. It was a loaded chamber waiting to fire. Back inside, I went straight for my laptop. The old cloud folder we'd used for taxes and budgeting still sat untouched in our shared drive, or so I thought. I clicked in. 3 new files, all uploaded recently. One titled Joint Assets Liabilities. Another spreadsheet that wasn't mine, clearly from a lawyer or consultant. And the third, a prenup draft recently edited. My hand hovered over the mouse for a second. Then I opened it. Terms, percentages, dates, clauses. She was prepping. Quietly, efficiently, legally. Not just for separation, but for financial advantage. Every part of it was cold, clean, deliberate. She was building her side of the argument before I even had a chance to respond. That night, after hours staring at those documents, I called my brother. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy but alert. I hadn't told him much until now, but I read sections to him, especially the clause that would give her full access to the joint brokerage if we split within 6 months. He didn't speak for a while. Then, she's building the ark before the storm. He told me to start protecting myself, change every password, document everything, screenshot, screen record, timestamp. He reminded me how someone once tried to sue our dad over a fake business agreement and how it was documentation that saved him. The first one to document, Darren said, wins. So I started. I recorded every file, backed them up to an encrypted email I'd created for emergencies. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't spiraling. I was planning. Then I sat back and looked at the screen. My reflection stared back, tired, older, but aware, awake. That's when I thought about her kind of control. It was never loud, never cruel in the obvious ways. It was strategic, sharp. It made me question myself, doubt my memory, doubt my sanity. She didn't scream. She whispered questions that lingered. I started a new document. Moments I shrunk. It wasn't a diary. It was a map. A trail of every time I backed down, doubted my gut, justified her red flags. And for the first time, I didn't feel embarrassed by the list. I felt empowered by it because now I saw it wasn't kindness that kept me silent all those years. It was erosion. Erosion masked as patience. Just before I shut the laptop, a notification popped up. A new folder shared from Alara. Title: For mediation. And in the body of the email, we need to have a talk soon. Let's handle this maturely. She still thought I was in the dark, still thought she had control of the pace. But I'd already stepped off the board and built my own. Alara looked up from her phone and said, "My mother's coming over for lunch." Her tone was casual, almost too casual. She added, "She'll bring Aunt Serena and Diane." I forced a nod. No prior notice, no discussion, a family drop-in dressed as a casual Sunday. My mind tightened. I made sure my phone was charged. I surveyed the living room, making mental notes of where cameras might see us. If this turns into a hearing, I needed every word recorded. I changed into jeans and a neutral sweater. Not confrontation gear, just me. If I looked defensive, they'd twist it. I stepped onto the patio. The air was warm but felt cold inside. I told myself, if she wants war, I'll meet her. They arrived. Ramona first, smiling but her eyes cold. Aunt Serena followed, cousin Diane behind her. I felt pressure in the room immediately, like I walked into a ring. They guided me toward the dining room. I sat as though I expected this. They began carefully. Ramona, I just don't see how you're supporting Alara emotionally. Diane, marriage is partnership. You've got to pull your weight. Words like duty, sacrifice, man's responsibility loaded the air. I listened quietly, counting how many times they used you should, you must, you owe. They weren't here to mediate. They were here to gaslight me. I leaned forward and asked softly, who paid for Ramona's wellness retreat last spring? Their faces flickered. Silence. I took that pause. Then I laid out things. Every bill I covered, every health cost of hers, home repairs, her business supplies. I wasn't angry. I was precise. I said, refusing $20,000 wasn't rejection. It was protection. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke truth loud enough. They sat frozen. Alara broke first. Tears in her eyes, she choked. You're embarrassing me in front of my family. Aunt Serena whispered, she deserves better. I nodded, calm. If that's what you believe, then maybe you should go find it. She shouted accusations. You're cold, you're manipulative. I watched her lip tremble. I said, you don't get to light the fire, then call me the arsonist. I walked out of the room, not the house, just the conversation, and let them sit in their anger. Later, sitting in my study, I logged into my phone and a message popped up from an unknown number. You don't know half of it. Call me. I was her roommate. Then a screenshot, a planning chat between Alara and someone plotting to frame me if I went public. My hands trembled, but inside, I felt something solid shift. I saved the image, locked my phone, and whispered to myself that the storm had started. Now I held the matches. I stared at the screenshot over and over. Alara's texts plotting to make me look unstable, arranging blame, crafting lies. The message claimed she'd spin things from day one, build sympathy around her, paint me as the villain. The source was Ava, her former roommate, someone Alara had long dismissed as unstable when she left last year. Now I saw how easily she'd painted Ava's truth as brokenness to everyone else. That moment changed everything. My house didn't feel safe anymore. I made a secure folder, encrypted everything. Screenshots, audio clips, threads of messages. She thought silence was my weakness. She lit the match, but I learned early on to let the fire reveal, not burn me. I called Ava and asked to meet at a cafe downtown. We chose a neutral spot, public enough to level the playing field. Before I left, Alara texted me asking where I was. I didn't reply. Instead, I rehearsed what I'd say. Calm, factual, no theatrics, no breakdowns. I walked out of the house with the evidence in my pocket. At the cafe, Ava handed me a flash drive. It held a recording, Alara's voice laughing, saying she'd frame me if I ever exposed her lies. She plotted dates, shifts in narrative, who to tell and how to twist. Ava's voice broke when she said, I can't stay silent anymore. She'd lived in the shadows of that plan. My heart pounded. Betrayal cut deep, but I kept my face level. I thanked her, packed the drive, and left with clarity. That was the moment I stopped being a bystander. Later that night, I returned home, heart heavy. I opened the shared laptop. The browser history was gone. Emails cleared. Logs wiped. She knew. She erased footprints before I could follow them. My printed documents were safe in the car, hidden under floor mats, but the urgency amplified. She was building her defense before even starting the war. Alara greeted me as though nothing changed. I forced a small smile. Inside, I whispered, "She thinks this is performance. I know better now. I've written my own script." I messaged a lawyer friend, laid the groundwork. He told me, "Don't move first, let her step. Document more. Protect every angle." I made a burner cloud backup and time-stamped everything. I tucked the flash drive under my mattress. That night, I lay beside her in the dark. She breathed, slowly. I looked at her face and promised myself, this silence ends soon. I'll speak, I'll fight, not for revenge, but for truth. When I got back from the cafe, I pulled into the driveway slower than usual. The porch light was dimmer than I remembered, or maybe it just felt that way. Inside, the house was too still. I walked in, took a slow breath, and headed to the kitchen. Opened the fridge like I was thirsty, but I wasn't. I just needed something to do with my hands. Standing there, the glow from the refrigerator lighting up the room, I looked at the wall of family photos, pictures of trips, birthdays, her mother smiling like she was proud of something I couldn't name. I closed the fridge, grabbed a glass, and turned to fill it at the sink. Alara walked in behind me, quiet steps, like she expected me to flinch. "You okay?" she asked. Too soft, too easy. "Are we still pretending nothing's wrong?" I answered, not looking at her. She paused, just long enough to give herself away. I dried my hands and turned. "Where's the hospital paperwork? Ramona's records?" "What?" "I want to see the documentation." "Her treatment, dates, names, anything." She blinked. Her mouth opened, then shut. "It's private," she said finally. "That's her personal journey." "No, it's not. It became mine when you used it to justify everything. The retreat, the fundraiser, the way your family cornered me like a villain." She stepped back. She asked me not to share. I called the hospital. There's no record, nothing, no chemo, no appointments, not even a blood test. Her face drained of color. "You lied," I said, "and you used her to do it." She staggered, caught the edge of the counter. "Alara, if this was about needing help, I would have helped. But this was warfare, emotional extortion. You sold me on a tragedy that never happened." Before she could respond, her aunt, Serin, who'd arrived an hour earlier to talk through the tension, stepped into the hallway. "You mean, she really didn't go?" Serin said, startled. Alara's head whipped around. "Auntie, stay out of this." "No, I remember now," Serin said. "She told me she was going to a spa retreat that month. I asked how chemo was going, and she said, 'Oh, that story's just for the cause.'" Alara froze. "Wait, what?" her cousin muttered from the living room. I didn't speak. I let the silence settle like fog. Alara's lip quivered. "You're twisting everything." I held up a hand, calm, controlled. I walked into my study, pulled out a folder, and came back. I laid the papers down on the coffee table one by one, printed texts, the fake GoFundMe breakdown, timestamps from medical provider calls. Then I hit play on my phone. Alara's voice came out laughing in that recording Ava gave me. "They'll never question it if there's a sob story attached." Gasps. Someone muttered, "Jesus." I didn't look to see who. I looked at Alara. "You built this house on lies. I'm taking it apart brick by brick." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She sat. I left the living room and walked into the bedroom. My hands were steady now. My breath, finally, even. Later that night, I heard something slip beneath the door. Thought it was a receipt, maybe a note from her. It was an envelope. No markings, no return address. Just a single piece of white cardstock inside. Typed in bold, "You'll regret exposing us." No name. No signature. But I knew that whoever sent it didn't realize I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. I woke up before the sun, couldn't sleep anyway, made myself a cup of coffee, black, strong, and sat at the table, hoping for silence, but knowing something was coming. I opened my email. There it was. Subject, "Notice of divorce filing." Sent at 6:12 a.m. from a law firm downtown. I opened the attachment. her name at the top, my name below it. Then came the list: emotional abuse, financial coercion, unpredictable behavior. She beat me to it. No surprise, really. Just confirmation. Still, it hit like a punch. I sat back in the chair, let the weight of her accusations settle across my shoulders. Then I leaned in and read every line, every lie. I highlighted the contradictions, the parts where she claimed to be afraid of me yet used my income to cover spa weekends. I printed the documents, saved digital copies, texted my attorney, "We need to meet. Now." By 9 a.m., I was in his office, folder in hand. He listened as I walked him through it all: recordings, receipts, timestamps, voice memos. His eyebrows climbed as I laid it out. "You were ready," he said. "No," I replied. "I was cornered, so I prepared." He nodded slowly, then told me something I hadn't expected. "We can counter this, not just defend. You have grounds to sue for defamation. This is calculated, malicious." We started drafting the response right there, point by point, truth over fiction. He guided the language carefully. No aggression, no emotional language, just facts. Afterward, I called a few old coworkers, a couple friends who'd seen our marriage up close, told them what was going on, asked for character statements. Every one of them said yes without hesitation. She threw the first stone, I thought, but I brought the truth. That night, back at the house, I knew something had shifted. She stood in the hallway when I came in, arms crossed, face tight. "My lawyer called," she said. "Said you're prepared." I nodded. "Your story only works when I don't speak." Her mouth twitched, then her hand flew. The vase on the entry table exploded against the wall. "There it is," I whispered to myself. The version only I ever saw. I didn't flinch, just slid my phone from my pocket and hit record, capturing the final seconds of her rage in silence. Later that evening, her aunt and cousin showed up again, like they were running PR for her. But this time, I didn't sit for a talk. I stood and played them a voice note. Ilara threatening to ruin my credibility before he even gets to court. Seren looked like someone pulled the rug out from under her. "We didn't know she went this far," she said quietly. Ramona stayed silent, her eyes on the floor. I looked at them both. "You can stand with her lies, or you can step aside. I won't ask again." They left without a word. No hug, no defense. The house felt oddly quiet after that. Not peaceful, just honest. Early the next morning, I sat at the kitchen counter with a second cup of coffee. A notification popped up. It was a direct message, no name, no context. "Hey, is this your story on Reddit?" I clicked the link. There it was, a viral post, front page. Her version, Ilara's script, full of misquotes, twisted timelines, and staged photos. Hundreds of comments. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. Court is one thing, but the internet? That's a different battlefield. I took a breath, opened my files, and began to write my side of the story, line by line, with evidence. The community center buzzed quietly that Sunday morning. Fold-out chairs lined the hall, black and white photos of my father in uniform arranged on easels. I stood near the entrance, greeting familiar faces and strangers alike, some who served with him, others who just came to honor a man they didn't personally know. I helped hang the final photo, a candid shot of him fixing the fence out back. No medals, no dress blues, just who he was, a man who showed up, did the work, and never needed applause. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. He taught me to never back down when it mattered. I didn't need to say more. The event rolled on quietly until my cousin leaned in during the buffet line and whispered, "You see the trust account alert?" I paused. "What alert?" She tried again. It didn't take long to confirm. The trustee called as I was stepping outside to clear my head. Ilara had submitted a $50,000 withdrawal request, posing it as a medical emergency. Again. But the paperwork was doctored, the signatures mismatched, and this time the bank had flagged it. Fraud. And not just any fund. This was the memorial trust tied to my father's name, the one I asked her specifically to never touch. The hall's noise dimmed. Word spread fast in rooms like that. I saw the glances, the side conversations. I walked back to the mic, not for another tribute, but because something in me wouldn't stay seated. "This isn't about a stolen card or a missing dollar," I began. This is about trust, about a pattern of betrayal that some of you have witnessed and some of you will wish you had spoken up against. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. I just laid out the facts. Sometimes I said, though, the person who promises to stand by you is the one who cuts you down from behind. Then I stepped away. As I moved through the hall to grab my coat, I saw her. Ilara, at the doorway, eyes scanning the room that had once smiled at her. No one moved toward her. She didn't say a word, just turned around and left. And this time, I didn't follow. Later that afternoon, I returned home. For once, it felt like mine again. No shadows on the wall, no lingering perfume, just me and the sound of the fridge humming in the kitchen. The divorce paperwork was progressing. The funds were frozen tight. Ramona hadn't reached out. Neither had Seren or anyone else from her side. I poured a cup of tea, sat by the window. The silence didn't press on my chest the way it used to. It felt clean. Healing isn't loud. It's in the quiet that no longer hurts. I picked up my phone and searched flights to Maine. Just me, the coast, and a cabin tucked into pine trees. I'd been putting that trip off for years. A week passed. I returned from the grocery store and noticed something wedged beneath the front doormat. A plain envelope, no return address. Just my name, written in handwriting I knew too well. Inside, a single card. I never hated you. I just loved myself more. I stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and tucked it into the back of the drawer in my desk. Didn't read beyond the first line. I'd already lived the rest of the letter,